owner. I need this job to save my mum. When he discovers the truth, he does something unbelievable. The rain battered the city that autumn afternoon, turning the elegant streets into rushing rivers. Maddox, the most acclaimed restaurant in the region, shone like a beacon in the storm. Inside, the kitchen operated like a perfectly choreographed dance. Warren Maddox, standing by the central counter, watched his chefs work with the precision of surgeons. At 42, he had built an enviable gastronomic empire, 5 restaurants across the country, 3 published books, and a TV show. None of it filled the emptiness he carried. "Chef, the sauce for the lamb is ready," one of the cooks informed him. Warren dipped a small spoon into the sauce, tasted it, and closed his eyes for a moment. "More time," he said simply, returning the spoon. His cell phone vibrated, another message from his assistant, reminding him of the charity dinner that night. Another event where he would smile for cameras, drink expensive champagne, and talk about nothing with people who meant nothing. The perfect life he had built was a castle of golden sand, impressive on the outside, empty on the inside. The kitchen door swung open, and his hostess, Vivian, rushed in. "Chef, sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation out front." "What is it? A critic complaining?" he asked, not looking up from the dish he was finishing. "Not exactly. It's a child, alone, asking for the owner." Warren frowned and looked at Vivian. "A child?" "Yes, a little girl. She won't leave. Says she needs to speak with you, specifically." With a sigh, Warren wiped his hands on his apron and took it off. The main dining room was nearly empty at this hour, just 2 couples at distant tables, enjoying a late lunch. Near the entrance, he saw a small figure, soaked from head to toe. A girl no older than 5 was waiting. She had dark brown hair stuck to her face by the rain, large brown eyes that seemed to take up half her face, and she was clutching a faded pink backpack almost her size. Her clothes, simple and a bit too large, spoke of a modest life. Warren approached cautiously, like one would approach a frightened bird. "Hello," he said, crouching down to her level. "Are you looking for me?" The girl studied him for a moment, as if confirming it was really him. "Are you the owner here?" she asked, with a seriousness surprising for someone so small. "I am. My name is Warren." "And yours?" "Tessa," she replied, holding out a tiny wet hand. "Tessa Voss." Warren shook her hand automatically, but something inside him froze when he heard the last name. Voss. "Are you here alone, Tessa? Where are your parents?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "My mum is at home." She looked down at her own feet, then faced Warren with determination. "I came for the job." "Job?" Warren repeated, confused. "Yes." Tessa pointed to a sign in the window. "It says you need a chef. I came to apply." For a moment, Warren almost smiled. A 5-year-old girl wanting to be a chef in his Michelin-starred restaurant. On any other day, he would have found it amusing, but her last name had awakened a ghost he thought he had buried. "I think you're a little young for the position," he replied gently. "Why don't you tell me more about yourself while we wait for your parents to come pick you up?" Tessa's face hardened with an expression far too serious for her age. "There's no one coming to get me. I need this job." Her voice trembled slightly. "It's to save my mum." The restaurant seemed to have fallen completely silent. The staff pretended not to watch the scene, but Warren could feel all eyes on them. "Save your mum," he repeated, a tightness in his chest. "What's wrong with her?" "She's sick." Tessa opened her backpack and took out a small plastic container. "Look, I know how to make grilled cheese sandwiches. And mac and cheese I too, Mommy taught me." Warren felt a wave of conflicting emotions. This determined child, soaked by the rain, offering her basic culinary skills to an award-winning chef, would be touching under any circumstance. But there was something more. "What's your mother's name, Tessa?" "Celine. Celine Voss," the girl replied, brushing her wet bangs from her face. The confirmation hit him like a punch to the gut. Celine, the woman he had loved and betrayed 7 years ago. The woman who disappeared from his life without a trace after discovering his infidelity. The woman whose face still visited his dreams in his loneliest moments. Warren felt his face go pale. "Come with me," he said, standing up. "Let's get you dry first, and then we'll talk about this job." He led Tessa to his office in the back of the restaurant. He grabbed a clean towel from the small adjoining bathroom and handed it to the girl. "Can you tell me more about your mom?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Tessa dried her hair vigorously. "She always worked a lot. She used to cater parties, but now she's too weak, coughing a lot. Sometimes she gets a fever." Her eyes filled with tears. "We need money for the doctor and medicine." Warren sat down, stunned. The guilt he had carried for years now seemed to triple in weight. What had happened to Celine after they broke up? How had she ended up in this situation? "Tessa, how did you get here?" "By bus," she replied, as if it were obvious. "I took the money from my piggy bank. I saw the restaurant when we passed by on the bus this morning, and there was a sign saying you needed a chef." Warren felt a chill run down his spine. "And you decided to just come in and ask for the job? All by yourself?" Tessa nodded with determination. "I know how to ride the bus for emergencies, and this is an emergency." She looked at Warren with curiosity. "Your sign has the name Maddox on it. Is that your last name?" Warren ignored the question. "And does your mom know you're here?" Tessa looked down. Guilty. "No. She was sleeping. I left a note." Warren picked up his phone. "I need to call her. She must be worried." "No," Tessa exclaimed, alarmed. "She'll be mad at me." That wasn't a surprise, but the girl's reaction intrigued him. "Even so, I need to let her know where you are." Warren hesitated. "Do you know her number?" Tessa shook her head. Then she opened her backpack and took out a small notebook with a unicorn on the cover. "But I know our address. My teacher taught me how to write it." She opened the notebook and showed him an address written in a child's handwriting. It was in a modest neighborhood, far from there. Warren recognized the area, very different from the luxury apartment where Celine lived when they were together. "You came all the way from there by yourself?" he asked, genuinely impressed. "Yes. Mommy taught me how to ride the bus for emergencies, and this is an emergency." Warren took a deep breath, making a decision. "I'm taking you home right now." "But what about the job?" Tessa asked, her eyes shining with hope. "We'll talk about that with your mum, okay?" Warren called his assistant and asked her to cancel all his appointments for the afternoon. Then he went to the kitchen. "Jean, you're in charge for the rest of the day," he told his sous chef. "I have an emergency." "Is something wrong, chef?" Jean asked, surprised by the sudden change of plans. Warren looked at Tessa, who was waiting near the door, clutching her pink backpack. "Nothing that can't be fixed," he replied, knowing it was a lie. 15 minutes later, they were in Warren's car, an elegant Mercedes that made Tessa's eyes widen. "Your car is nice," she commented, buckling her seatbelt. "We don't have a car. Mommy says it's too expensive." Every word from the girl was like a tiny needle piercing the comfortable bubble Warren lived in. As he drove, following the GPS directions, he watched Tessa from the corner of his eye. She was looking out the window, fascinated by the luxurious interior of the vehicle. She had features that resembled Celine, the shape of her eyes, the small nose. "Tessa, how old are you exactly?" 5 years and 4 months, she answered promptly. "My birthday is in January." The GPS announced they had arrived. Warren parked in front of a small apartment building, visibly worn by time. A modest structure, with narrow fire escapes where a few plants tried to survive, and clothes hung on makeshift lines. Tessa unbuckled her seatbelt with dexterity. "This is it. 3rd floor, apartment 302. Warren took a deep breath, his heart racing. He was about to see Celine again after all these years, the woman he had loved deeply and hurt unforgivably. "Let's go," he said, getting out of the car. Tessa ran ahead, climbing the stairs with the typical energy of a child. Warren followed, each step feeling like a walk to the courtroom where he would be judged for his past mistakes. On the 3rd floor, Tessa stopped in front of a door with the number 302 and looked at Warren. "Mommy's going to be mad at me," she said, suddenly hesitant. "It's going to be okay," Warren assured her, not sure if he believed it himself. Tessa pulled a key attached to a string from under her shirt and unlocked the door. "Mommy!" she called, entering slowly. The apartment was small but impeccably organized, a living room that merged with an open kitchen, simple but cozy decor. A few photos of Tessa were scattered on the walls, the scent of lavender in the air, the same perfume Celine always wore. "Tessa! Oh my God, where were you?" A female voice came from one of the rooms, followed by hurried footsteps, and then she appeared. Celine Voss, thinner than Warren remembered, with her brown hair now shorter, was wearing sweatpants and a simple t-shirt. Her face showed clear signs of fatigue and worry. When she saw her daughter, she ran to her and knelt, hugging her tightly. "You terrified me. I found your note and almost had a heart attack. How could you leave like that by yourself?" "Sorry, Mommy," Tessa mumbled into her mother's shoulder. It was then that Celine noticed Warren's presence. Her eyes widened, and she instinctively pulled Tessa closer, as if to protect her. "You?" she said, a mix of shock and anger in her voice. "Say, what are you doing here?" Warren stood motionless at the entrance and unable to look away. Celine, after all these years, she was different, but it was still her, the woman he had never been able to completely forget. "Your daughter showed up at my restaurant," he explained, keeping his voice calm. "Faisa, I thought it was best to bring her back myself." Celine looked at Tessa with an expression of disbelief. "You went to his restaurant? Why?" Tessa, looking smaller under her mother's questioning gaze, answered in a low voice, "I wanted to get a job to buy your medicine." Celine's eyes filled with tears. She hugged her daughter again, tighter this time. "Oh, Tessa, you shouldn't worry about that." Warren took a step forward. "Celine, I didn't know. If I had any idea you were going through hard times..." She stood up quickly, placing herself between him and Tessa. What are you doing here?" Her tone was as sharp as a knife. "I don't need your help. You hurt me too much. Celine, please, I just want to help. Now." The bitterness in her voice was palpable. After all this time, you don't have that right." Warren felt each word like a blow, but he knew he deserved it. "I understand your anger, but this isn't about me or you. Tessa told me you're sick, that you need treatment. That's not your problem." Celine crossed her arms defensively. "Thank you for bringing her back. Now, please, leave." Warren hesitated, looking at Tessa, who was watching the scene with frightened eyes. "Celine, please, can we talk just for a minute? We have nothing to talk about." She pointed to the door. "So get out of my house." Warren tried to argue again, but Celine's determined expression made it clear there was no room for negotiation. He nodded slowly. "All right, I'm going." He took a card from his pocket and placed it on a table near the entrance. "My number, in case you change your mind." Before leaving, he looked at Tessa one last time. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Tessa. Your mum is lucky to have such a brave daughter." As he closed the door behind him, Warren felt a crushing weight in his chest. He stopped in the hallway, leaning against the wall. The image of Celine, visibly ill and struggling to get by, contrasted sharply with the life of luxury he led. And Tessa, that determined child who had risked everything to help her mother, could she be his daughter? He couldn't just walk away. Not this time. He slowly descended the stairs and got into his car, but didn't start the engine. He looked at the building. At the window he imagined was apartment 302. The guilt he had carried for years now had a face, a name, a tangible consequence. He took out his phone and dialed Jean, his sous chef. "I need a favor," he said as soon as he answered. "That special soup we make for VIP clients, can you prepare a portion and have it delivered to the address I'm about to give you?" He paused, "and add a basket of fresh fruit. The best we have." It was a small gesture, insignificant in the face of what he had done. But it was a start. Warren wasn't going to give up easily this time. Tessa had unknowingly given him a second chance, a chance for redemption he didn't deserve, but one he would seize with all his might. He started the car, but he didn't go home. He went to his lawyer's office. He needed to find out how he could help Celine and Tessa without invading their lives. The rain had stopped, but the storm in his heart was just beginning. The morning after meeting Tessa, Warren woke up before his alarm. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse, the luxury around him suddenly feeling excessive. The image of little Tessa, soaked by the rain, determined to get a job to help her sick mother, wouldn't leave his mind. Nor could he forget Celine's gaze, a mix of shock, anger, and exhaustion. That wasn't the Celine he knew. The vibrant woman, full of life and dreams, was now struggling to survive and raise a daughter alone. Warren got up and, while having coffee, made a decision. He couldn't change the past, but he could do something about the present. He picked up the phone and called his personal assistant. "Sam, I need you to do some shopping and deliveries today. It's important." 2 hours later, Warren watched from his car parked at a discreet distance from Celine's building. Our delivery person carried 2 large baskets to the entrance. He had given specific instructions: leave them at the door, ring the bell, and leave. No mention of who sent them. The baskets contained the basics: fresh fruits, vegetables, artisan bread, cheeses, good quality meats, milk, eggs, and a few items he imagined Tessa would like: colorful cereals, chocolate, animal-shaped cookies. Along with all that, 2 children's cookbooks, carefully chosen for her age. Warren saw the door open and Tessa appear, looking curiously from side to side. The girl examined the baskets with surprise, then shouted something into the apartment. Moments later, Celine appeared at the door, hesitant. She looked around, trying to locate who had left the baskets. With a suspicious expression, she quickly took the baskets inside and closed the door. He didn't expect thanks. In fact, he preferred anonymity, at least for now. He knew Celine would probably guess who sent them, but it didn't matter. The important thing was that they had what they needed. In the following days, Warren fell into a new routine. In the morning, he worked at the restaurant, overseeing lunch preparations. In the afternoon, he would step away to handle personal matters, as he told his staff. These matters consisted of organizing new deliveries for Celine and Tessa's apartment. Each delivery was carefully thought out. He didn't want to seem ostentatious or make Celine feel humiliated. He sent just enough practical things, nothing extravagant. In each package, he included something special for Tessa: a new book, a small educational game, drawing supplies. In the third delivery, he added a discreet box of medicine. He had researched what medications might help with the symptoms Tessa had described: antibiotics, cough syrup, fever reducers. He also included an envelope with cash. Not much, just enough to help with doctor's appointments and basic bills. He knew Celine might refuse it, but he had to try. A week after the first delivery, Warren was again watching from a distance when the delivery arrived. This time, it was a small ready-made meal he had prepared himself in his home kitchen: a comforting soup, warm homemade bread, and a light dessert. He had also sent a small tub of chocolate ice cream for Tessa. He saw the door open and Tessa appear. The girl's face lit up when she saw the bags. She looked around as if searching for someone, and her eyes met Warren's car. Even from a distance, he could see her wide smile and the little wave she gave before going inside with the bags. She knew. Somehow, the girl knew it was him. The next day, Warren received a surprise. An envelope with no return address arrived at his office in the restaurant. Inside, there was a drawing made with colored pencils, a smiling girl holding baskets of food. In the bottom corner, in the clumsy handwriting of a 5-year-old, it said, "Thank you for the yummy things, from Tessa." Warren felt a lump in his throat. He carefully put the drawing in his briefcase. That small gesture meant more than any formal thank you. The deliveries continued over the weeks. Fresh fruit on Mondays, books for Tessa on Wednesdays, homemade meals on weekends, medicine as needed. Discreetly, he also began to pay some of their bills: the rent, the electricity. He did it all without fanfare, without seeking recognition, just leaving the paid receipts in their mailbox. One afternoon, when he personally left a bag at the door, he got a surprise. The door opened just as he was walking away, and Tessa ran out. "I knew it was you," she exclaimed, with a huge smile. "I saw you from the window." Warren turned, uncertain. He didn't want to force an encounter with Celine, who probably wasn't ready to see him yet. "Hi, Tessa," he said, crouching to her level. "How are you?" "Better," she replied excitedly. "Mommy, too. The medicine you sent helped. She doesn't cough as much now." Warren felt immense relief. "I'm glad to hear that." "Why do you bring us things?" Tessa asked, with the direct curiosity of children. For a moment, Warren didn't know what to say. How do you explain guilt, regret, and redemption to a 5-year-old? "Because I want to help," he said finally. "And because you were very brave coming to my restaurant that day." Tessa smiled, satisfied with the answer. "Mommy gets mad when the things arrive," she confided, lowering her voice. "But then she puts everything away. She told me it's rude to refuse gifts." The girl's frankness made him smile. At least Selena was accepting his help, even if reluctantly. "Tessa!" Celine's voice came from inside the apartment. "Who are you talking to?" The girl's face tensed with guilt. "I have to go," she said quickly. "Thanks for the ice cream last week. Strawberry is my favorite." Before Warren could reply, she grabbed the delivery bag and ran inside. Through the crack of the ajar door, Warren caught a glimpse of Celine. Their eyes met for a brief moment before she closed the door. There was no smile, no wave, just a look, less hostile than before, perhaps. It was the most he could hope for now. The following week, Warren prepared something special. He found out through Tessa in one of their brief encounters that her mother was having trouble sleeping. He included a small bottle of lavender oil and a calming herbal tea infusion that his own mother used to make. When he arrived at the building, he noticed a small figure waiting at the entrance. Tessa was sitting on the steps, swinging her legs impatiently. Upon seeing him, she jumped up. "You came," she exclaimed. "I have something for you." She held out a crumpled envelope. Warren opened it carefully and found another drawing. This time, it showed 3 figures, a small one, clearly Tessa, a larger one next to her, who must be Celine, and a third figure with what looked like a chef's hat. "It's us," Tessa explained, pointing. "Tamisi, Mommy, and you." Warren felt a tightness in his chest. "It's a beautiful drawing, Tessa, thank you." "Mommy said I can thank you for the things, but I can't invite you in," she said, with the typical frankness of children. "She's not ready yet." The unexpected sincerity caught him off guard. "That's okay," he replied, handing her the delivery bag. "These things will help your mum sleep better." Tessa took the bag, which looked huge in her small arms. "She'll like it. She stays up a long time at night. Sometimes she cries." The information hit him like a blow. Even after so much time, Selene was still suffering because of him. "Tessa, time to come in." Selene's voice came from a window above. Warren looked up and saw Selene watching them from the apartment window. Their gazes met for a moment. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He just held her gaze, trying to convey through it everything he couldn't say in words. Selene was the first to look away. "Coming, Mommy," Tessa shouted, then turned to Warren. "Thanks for the stuff. Mommy doesn't say it, but I know she's thankful too." With that, the girl ran into the building, carrying the heavy bag as if it were a treasure. Warren stood for a moment, looking at the now empty window. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Selene was allowing Tessa to talk to him. She was accepting his help, even if out of necessity. For now, that would have to be enough. His silent gestures would continue, patient and constant like the tide, not to erase the past, but to offer a better future for Tessa and, maybe one day, for Selene too. The day began like any other at Maddox. The kitchen buzzed with activity, the sound of knives on cutting boards creating a familiar symphony, and Warren supervised everything with his usual precision. He was finalizing a new dish for the autumn menu when Jean, his sous chef, approached with a worried expression. "Chef, there's a child at the reception asking for you. It seems urgent." Warren felt a tightness in his chest. It could only be Tessa. In recent weeks, their encounters had been limited to brief conversations when he dropped off deliveries, always under Celine's distant watch from the window. He handed the spoon to Jean and hurried out to the main dining room. At the restaurant entrance, Tessa stood, soaked by the rain pouring outside. Her face was red from crying, and her small body was visibly shaking. "Tessa," Warren approached, kneeling in front of her. "What happened?" As soon as she saw him, the girl ran towards him, throwing herself into his arms with a desperate sob. "Please, help me," she pleaded between tears. "My mum has a fever. She's saying strange things. I'm scared." Warren's blood ran cold. He picked Tessa up in his arms and headed quickly to the kitchen. "Jean, take over everything. I have an emergency," he ordered, grabbing his coat and car keys. "Should I call an ambulance?" Jean asked, alarmed by Warren's expression. "There's no time. I'll take her myself." With Tessa in his arms, Warren ran to the parking lot, shielding her from the rain with his coat. The girl clung to him, trembling. "How did you get here alone?" he asked, placing her in the passenger seat and fastening her seatbelt. "By bus," she replied, wiping her tears. "Mommy taught me the way for emergencies, remember? And this is an emergency." Warren felt a pang of admiration for the little girl's courage, even amidst the overwhelming worry. "How long has your mum been like this?" "Since last night. She said she would get better, that she just needed to rest," Tessa sniffled. "But this morning she was talking to people who weren't there, and then she couldn't get out of bed." Warren sped up, weaving through city traffic with urgency. In his mind, 1,000 scenarios played out, none of them good. The medications he had sent weren't enough for a more serious condition. He should have insisted that Celine see a doctor properly. In less than 10 minutes, they arrived at the building. Warren picked Tessa up again and took the stairs 2 at a time. "The key," said Tessa, pulling a cord from under her shirt. "It's here." Warren unlocked the apartment door and went inside, calling for Celine. There was no answer. The apartment was too quiet. Tessa pointed to the main bedroom, and Warren headed in that direction, his heart pounding. Celine was lying in bed, her pale face glistening with sweat. Her hair was stuck to her forehead, and she was murmuring incomprehensible words, her half-closed eyes staring at the ceiling. "Celine!" Warren called, approaching cautiously. "It's me, Warren." She turned her head towards him, her unfocused eyes trying to recognize him. "Warren?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "What? Tessa? Where?" "I'm here, Mommy," said Tessa, climbing onto the bed and holding her mother's hand. "I got help." Warren touched Celine's forehead. It was burning. He needed to get her to a hospital immediately. "Celine, you need a doctor." "I'm taking you to the hospital." She tried to protest, but she was too weak. Warren wasted no time. He wrapped her in a blanket and picked her up in his arms. It was frightening how light she was. Celine let her head fall against his chest, with no strength to resist. "Tessa, grab a change of clothes for you and your mum," Warren instructed. Quickly, the girl ran to obey, returning minutes later with a small backpack. Together, they went down to the car. Warren carefully placed Celine in the back seat and helped Tessa settle in next to her mother. He drove as fast as he could to the best private hospital in the city. The entire way, he watched in the rearview mirror as Tessa held her mother's hand, murmuring words of comfort. The scene broke his heart. At the hospital, Warren spared no expense. He identified himself, demanded immediate attention, and covered all costs without hesitation. Celine was quickly taken for tests, while he and Tessa waited in the waiting room. "Is she going to be okay?" Tessa asked, sitting next to him, her little legs dangling without reaching the floor. "She will be," Warren assured her, hoping he was right. "The doctors here are the best in the city." Tessa nodded, fully trusting his word. She rested her head on his arm, exhausted from the adrenaline and fear. "Do you know what she has?" Warren asked softly. "The neighbor said it looks like pneumonia. Her daughter had it once." Tessa looked at him with big, worried eyes. "Is it serious?" "It can be, if not treated. But your mum is in the right place now. Everything will be okay." 2 hours later, the doctor finally appeared. Warren stood up, with a sleeping Tessa in his arms. "Bacterial pneumonia," the doctor confirmed. "Quite advanced. It's a good thing you brought her in today. Another day or two, and the situation would have been much more complicated." "Is she going to be okay?" Warren asked, feeling the weight of Tessa against his chest. "With the right treatment, yes. We'll keep her hospitalized for a few days for intravenous antibiotics and monitoring. Afterward, she can continue treatment at home, but she'll need complete rest for at least 2 weeks." Warren nodded, feeling simultaneously relieved and guilty. If he had insisted more, maybe Celine wouldn't have reached this point. "How can I see her?" She's sedated now, but you can go in briefly. Is the girl her daughter? Yes. It's best if she stays with you for now. Children can only visit during specific hours. Warren thanked him and, with Tessa still asleep in his arms, followed a nurse to the room where Celine was. Seeing her connected to monitors and with an oxygen mask made his heart ache. He approached the bed and watched her face. Even sick, she was still beautiful. The woman he had loved and hurt so deeply. The woman who was now fighting an illness that could have been avoided if pride hadn't prevented her from accepting more direct help. "I'll take care of Tessa," he whispered to Celine, even though he knew she couldn't hear him. "And of you too, if you'll let me." He left the room with a heavy heart and went to the reception, where he handled all the administrative details. He ensured the best room, the best doctors, medications, everything necessary for Celine's recovery. Money was not an issue. The problem would be when she woke up and found out where she was and who was paying. Warren returned to the waiting room and watched Tessa sleeping, curled up in the chair. Her face, even in sleep, held traces of worry. No child should carry that kind of weight. He decided to take Tessa to his home. The empty apartment would only remind her of her sick mother, and he had plenty of space in his penthouse. On the way, he stopped at a store and bought some basic clothes for her, since they had left in a hurry. When they arrived, Tessa was already awake, observing with wide eyes the luxurious building where Warren lived. "You live here?" she asked, impressed. "Yes," he replied, guiding her to the private elevator. "You'll stay with me while your mum gets better in the hospital, okay?" Tessa nodded, still looking around in awe. Warren's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building. It was a large, elegant space, but curiously impersonal. Few photographs, no objects that told stories. A beautiful place, but without a soul. "I'll get the guest room ready for you," Warren said, taking her by the hand. "Then we can get something to eat. You must be hungry." "Mommy's going to be mad when she finds out I'm here," Tessa commented, as she timidly explored the room that would be hers temporarily. Warren sighed. "Probably, but it's the best for you right now." In the days that followed, they established a routine. Warren adjusted his hours at the restaurant to be able to care for Tessa and visit Celine regularly. In the morning, he would take the girl to see her mother at the hospital. In the afternoon, they would return home, where he helped her with lessons sent by her school, and then they would cook together. Celine was gradually improving. The fever had subsided, and she could now stay awake for longer periods. She was still weak, but the doctors were optimistic about her recovery. However, she remained distant with Warren. She accepted his help only because she had no choice, and because Tessa seemed happy and well cared for. "How is she today?" Warren asked a nurse on the 5th day of her hospital stay. "Much better. The fever hasn't returned, and the tests show the infection is subsiding. If she continues like this, she can go home in 2 days." Warren thanked her and went to the room. Tessa was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, excitedly telling her mother about the aquarium they had visited the day before. "And there was a small shark. Warren said it doesn't eat people, only fish," she reported, gesturing. Celine smiled weakly at her daughter, but her expression changed when she noticed Warren at the door. It was no longer the hostility of the first few days, but there was still a clear barrier. "Thank you for taking care of her," Celine said, the words clearly difficult for her to say. "There's nothing to thank me for," Warren replied. "Tessa is an incredible child." An uncomfortable silence settled between them, broken only by Tessa's innocent chatter, who seemed not to notice the tension. That afternoon, back at the penthouse, Warren was preparing dinner while Tessa drew, sitting on the balcony. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. It was a breathtaking view, but Warren watched it distractedly, his mind still at the hospital. "Warren," Tessa called, interrupting his thoughts. "Yes," he replied, sitting in the chair next to her. "Mommy was very mad when you showed up at our house that day." Her voice was casual, but the words hit Warren like a blow. "I didn't understand why." "She said she doesn't trust you." Warren felt a lump in his throat. The raw honesty of children sometimes hurt more than any adult accusation. "Sometimes adults hurt each other," he replied carefully, "and then it's hard to trust again." Tessa looked up at him, curious. "Did you hurt my mommy?" The question hung in the air, heavy as lead. Warren could have dodged it, changed the subject, but something in those innocent eyes demanded honesty. "Yes," he admitted finally. "A long time ago, I hurt her very much." "And are you sorry?" "Every single day." Tessa considered the answer for a moment, then went back to her drawing. "Then she'll forgive you one day," she declared with the simple certainty of children. "Mommy always says that when someone is truly sorry, they deserve a second chance." Warren smiled, but it was a sad smile. If only it were that simple. "What are you drawing?" he asked, deliberately changing the subject. "Our house," Tessa replied, showing him the drawing. "Look, this is you, this is Mommy, and this is me." On the paper, 3 stick figures were smiling in front of a colorful house. A family. A possibility Warren had never truly considered possible. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the distrust and the unresolved history between him and Celine. But looking at Tessa, with her unwavering faith in redemption, he felt a spark of hope. The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was the hospital. Celine had asked for Tessa and wanted to talk to her. Warren handed the phone to the girl, who chatted excitedly with her mother for a few minutes. Watching Tessa talk on the phone, Warren allowed himself to imagine, for a brief moment, what it would be like to have this routine every day. A family, a real home. But he knew the path to that dream, if it even existed, would be long and difficult. Trust once broken was like a shattered vase. It could be glued back together, but the cracks would always remain visible. Still, looking at Tessa's drawing, with those 3 smiling figures holding hands, Warren allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way back, not to what they were before, but to something new, something better. Celine's recovery was progressing well. After a week in the hospital, the doctors finally cleared her for discharge, on the condition that she maintained absolute rest for at least 2 more weeks. Warren had offered his apartment. There was plenty of space, and it would be more comfortable for her, but Selene flatly refused. She preferred to go back home to her own space. Warren didn't insist. Instead, he arranged for everything to be ready for her return. A professional cleaning, a stocked pantry, even a new orthopedic mattress. And, of course, he hired a nurse to assist her during the day while Tessa was at school. "I don't need a babysitter," Celine protested when Warren explained the arrangement. "Hey, it's not a babysitter. It's a healthcare professional," he corrected, keeping his voice calm. The doctor was clear about the need for absolute rest. Celine sighed, visibly uncomfortable with depending on him, but eventually gave in. To Warren's surprise, when they said goodbye at the hospital, she looked him directly in the eye for the first time since they had reunited. "Thank you," she said simply, "for taking care of Tessa, and for all of this." Warren just nodded. Words seemed inadequate at that moment. Over the following weeks, a new routine was established. Warren would take Tessa to school in the morning before heading to the restaurant. In the afternoon, he would stop by Celine's apartment to drop off fresh groceries and check if everything was okay. On weekends, he would take Tessa on outings, giving Celine time to rest properly. It was during these moments with Tessa that Warren began to notice curious things about the girl. On a sunny Saturday, they were at the park, eating ice cream on a shaded bench. Warren watched Tessa carefully lick the edges of her ice cream to prevent it from melting down the sides. "Why are you looking at me like that?" the girl asked, looking up at him. Warren smiled. "I'm just watching how you eat your ice cream. Very methodical." "Methodical," she repeated, trying to pronounce the new word. "It means you do things in an organized, step-by-step way." Tessa nodded, pleased with the explanation, and turned her attention back to her ice cream. It was then that Warren noticed, while she thought she would move her tongue to the corner of her mouth. It was a curious habit that for some reason seemed familiar. The next day, he was preparing lunch for them in his apartment kitchen. He decided to make a Waldorf salad to accompany the main course. "Do you like walnuts, Tessa?" he asked, showing her a package of walnuts. The girl's face contorted into a grimace. "I can't eat them. I get all red and itchy. The doctor said I'm allergic." Warren raised his eyebrows, surprised. "But I'm allergic to walnuts too," he commented, putting the package back in the cabinet. "Since I was a kid." "Really?" Tessa's eyes widened. "Mommy says it's rare to have this allergy." "It's true. It's not very common," Warren agreed, intrigued by the coincidence. "Does your mom have it too?" Tessa shook her head. "No, just me. She says I have to be careful at school because it's dangerous." Warren nodded thoughtfully. It was a curious coincidence, but nothing more than that. The following Tuesday, he picked Tessa up from school and took her straight to the restaurant. It was a quiet day, and he wanted to show the girl what a professional kitchen was like when it wasn't in full swing. Tessa was enchanted, exploring every corner with endless curiosity. "Is that a giant blender?" she asked, pointing to an industrial mixer. "Almost. It's a mixer for making doughs and creams." Jean, the sous chef, approached them. "Hey there, little chef. Enjoying the tour?" Tessa smiled, and then, to Warren's surprise, she replied, "It's simply fascinating." Jean laughed and went on with his tasks, but Warren watched Tessa with curiosity. Simply fascinating was a phrase he himself used frequently, a bit unusual for a 5-year-old. "Where did you learn to say that, Tessa?" he asked. The girl shrugged. "I don't know, I just said it." Warren accepted the answer, but something about that expression continued to echo in his mind for the rest of the day. On Thursday, Tessa was drawing at the living room table while Warren prepared dinner. He watched her discreetly, noticing how she furrowed her eyebrows in concentration, exactly as he did when he was focused on a complicated recipe. "You frown just like Warren when you're concentrating," commented Celine, who had joined them for dinner for the first time. Warren and Tessa looked at Celine at the same time, with almost identical expressions of surprise. "You both do that," Selene continued, with a slightly uncomfortable smile. "That same face when someone interrupts your concentration." Warren felt a pang of something indefinable. It wasn't just Selene's comment, but the way she had said it, as if she had noticed something that bothered her. During dinner, Warren couldn't stop watching Tessa. The way she arranged the food on her plate, separating the different ingredients, how she held her fork, small gestures, unconscious habits that for some reason seemed strangely familiar. "What is it?" Tessa asked, noticing his gaze. "Nothing," Warren replied, looking away. "I'm just happy we're having dinner together." Later, after Celine and Tessa had left, Warren sat on the balcony with a glass of whiskey, contemplating the illuminated city below. He couldn't stop thinking about the small coincidences he had noticed in Tessa. The tick with her tongue, the walnut allergy, the phrase, "simply fascinating," the way she furrowed her brow, her habits at the table. They were small details, probably insignificant, but for some reason, they intrigued him deeply. Perhaps it was just the human instinct to find patterns where none existed. Or maybe Tessa was unconsciously mimicking his gestures, as children often do with adults they are close to. It wouldn't be unusual considering the time they were spending together. Still, something about those similarities touched him in a way he couldn't rationally explain. The next day, he took Tessa to the zoo. As they watched the monkeys, one of them made a funny face, and Tessa laughed so genuinely that Warren found himself laughing along, not at the monkey, but at the girl's spontaneous joy. "You have a great laugh," he commented. "Mommy says I laugh like you," Tessa replied casually, still watching the monkeys. "She said you both laugh with the same sound." Warren frowned, intrigued by this new comment. "Your mum talked about me, about how I laugh?" Tessa nodded, distracted by a monkey now doing acrobatics. "She said that when you first met, she loved hearing you laugh." The information took Warren by surprise. Celine rarely spoke about their past, and the idea that she would comment on such small details with Tessa was unexpected. "What else does your mum say about me?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Tessa shrugged. "Almost nothing. Only sometimes, when I do something that reminds her of you." Warren wanted to ask more, but Tessa had already run off to the next enclosure, where the penguins were swimming gracefully. That night, as he was taking her home, Tessa fell asleep in the back seat of the car. When they arrived, Warren carefully picked her up so as not to wake her and carried her to the apartment. Celine opened the door, now recovered enough to move comfortably around the house. "She fell asleep," she whispered, making way for Warren to enter. "On the way back," he replied, also in a low voice. "I'll put her to bed." Celine nodded and guided him to Tessa's room. Warren gently laid the girl down and stepped back, watching how serene her face was in sleep. There was something in her profile, in the curve of her nose, in the shape of her chin, that fascinated him without him knowing exactly why. Back in the living room, he found Selena making tea. "Would you like a cup?" she offered, surprising him with the gesture of hospitality. "I'd love one, thank you," he replied, sitting at the table. As they drank their tea in an almost comfortable silence, Warren couldn't stop thinking about the small coincidences he had noticed in Tessa, the inexplicable similarities, Celine's comments. "Tessa told me something curious today," he finally commented. "She said you think we laugh alike." Celine froze for an instant, then visibly relaxed, though her eyes remained alert. "So she has an impressive memory," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "I mentioned that once, a long time ago. She also said that you notice when she does things that remind you of me." Selene took a sip of tea, clearly trying to buy time. "Children absorb behaviors from the adults around them," she said finally. "It's not uncommon." There was something in the way she avoided looking at him directly that piqued Warren's curiosity. "It's fascinating how we notice these little similarities, isn't it?" he observed. "Like the walnut allergy we both have, or how she frowns the same way I do when she's concentrating." Celine stood up abruptly, taking her cup to the sink. "Say, it's getting late," she said, her back to him. "Thank you for taking Tessa to the zoo. She loved it." Warren got the hint. It was time to go, but the questions in his mind wouldn't stop multiplying. "Of course," he replied, standing up. "I loved it too." At the door, Celine finally looked at him, and there was something vulnerable in her eyes that Warren couldn't interpret. "Good night, Warren," she said, almost in a whisper. "Good night, Celine." On the way home, the small coincidences spun in his mind like pieces of an incomplete puzzle. There was something there, something that intrigued him deeply, something beyond the simple affection he had developed for Tessa. They were like little echoes, subtle reflections that touched him in a way he couldn't explain. And as much as he tried to convince himself they were just coincidences, he couldn't help but feel there was something more, something important that he couldn't yet see clearly. The conversations with Tessa, her innocent and surprisingly profound observations, touched him in a way that went beyond simple friendship. It was a connection he couldn't name, but one he felt growing every day. And in the subtext of Selene's reactions, in her averted gazes and interrupted sentences, he sensed there was an untold story, a secret that might explain all these little coincidences that so intrigued him. Warren's apartment was too quiet that night. After weeks of caring for Tessa, monitoring Celine's recovery, the loneliness of his penthouse felt almost tangible. The city lights twinkled through the panoramic windows, but he barely noticed, lost in thought. The coincidences he'd noticed in Tessa continued to haunt him. The way she moved her tongue when concentrating, the walnut allergy, the expressions identical to his. There was something there he couldn't explain, a missing piece to the puzzle. Warren poured himself a glass of whiskey and walked out onto the balcony. The night was clear, with stars visible despite the city lights. He remembered how Celine loved to watch the night sky. "Every star is a story," she used to say, and together they form something much greater. He hadn't thought of that phrase in years. Why now? Why were all these memories resurfacing? Maybe it was time to face the past head-on. With renewed determination, Warren left the glass on the table and went to the room he used as an office. At the back of the closet, behind boxes of documents and rarely used items, was something he had avoided for years, an old cardboard box, sealed with tape yellowed by time. He pulled it out, feeling the weight, not just physical, of the object. He took it to the living room and placed it on the coffee table. For a few minutes, he just stared at it, as if gathering courage. Finally, with a deep sigh, he removed the tape and opened the lid. The smell of the past hit him immediately. Old paper, faded perfume, dusty memories. On top, A photograph, him and Celine, arm in front of a lake, smiling for the camera. He couldn't remember who took the picture, but he remembered the day perfectly. It had been a weekend at a country house, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. Celine was radiant, her hair loose in the wind. Warren picked up the photo, running his thumb over the image. Celine looked so young, so full of life. So did he. His eyes had a sparkle that had long since faded. Under the photograph was a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a pair of silver earrings with small blue stones. His first gift to Celine. He remembered the nervousness as he gave it to her, her smile as she opened it. "They're the color of your eyes," he had said, and she had responded by putting them on immediately. One by one, Warren took the items out of the box. Movie tickets saved as souvenirs, birthday cards, a small teddy bear she kept on her work desk. Each object told a story, a moment of happiness that now seemed to belong to another life. At the bottom of the box, he found a stack of letters tied with a red ribbon. His heart raced. Letters he had written to Celine after their breakup, letters he never had the courage to send. With trembling hands, he untied the ribbon and opened the first letter. The date at the top indicated it was 2 weeks after Celine had left him. Celine, I don't know where to begin. The words seem inadequate, empty in the face of what I've done. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way, not just with that woman, but with my choices, with my cowardice. In that moment, when you confronted me, I should have owned up to everything. I should have begged for your forgiveness. Instead, I blamed you. I said unforgivable things, shifting the responsibility for my own mistakes onto you. How could I have been so cruel to the person I loved most in my life? How could I have been so blind as to not realize what I was throwing away? I lost you because of pride, because of fear. And now, in the silence of our apartment, which no longer feels like a home without you, I realize the void I created. I'm not asking you to come back. I don't have that right. I just wanted you to know that I understand the magnitude of my mistake and that I'm sorry, more than words can express. Warren. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. He remembered perfectly the day he wrote it, sitting exactly where he was now with a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him. He had never sent that letter, nor the others that followed. He put it away and picked up another dated a month later. Celine, I tried calling you yesterday. Your number has changed. I went to the office where you worked, and they told me you had quit. It's as if you've completely disappeared. I can't blame you. If I could, I would disappear from myself too. I hope you are well, wherever you are. I hope you find someone who values you as I should have. I still wake up thinking I'll find you beside me. I still make coffee for 2 every morning, out of habit. The silence of this house suffocates me. Warren. Another letter that never reached its destination. Warren continued reading, letter after letter, reliving the desperation, the guilt, the regret he had felt in those first few months without Celine. In the later letters, the tone changed, less raw pain, more reflection, more acceptance of the loss. The last letter was from 3 years ago. Celine, today marks 5 years since you left my life. I still don't know where you are, how you are, if you're happy. I stopped looking a long time ago, respecting your decision not to be found. Sometimes, I still dream of you. In the dream, we're at the country house, watching the stars. You point to a constellation and say something I can't hear. I wake up trying to remember your words. Time hasn't healed everything, as they say, but it has taught me to live with the consequences of my choices. I've built a successful career, but I know I traded what truly mattered for something that, in the end, is empty. I hope life has been kinder to you than I was, Warren. He folded the letter carefully and placed it back with the others. Slowly, as if in a ritual, he returned each item to the box, each photograph, each physical memory of a time that would never come back, except for one photograph. The last one in the pile, one he didn't remember keeping. It showed Celine alone, sitting on a park bench, looking at something out of frame with a serene smile on her lips. There was something different about her in that photo, a special glint in her eyes, a softness to her face. Warren looked at the date on the back. April, 6 years ago, just a few months before they broke up. April. Something about that date echoed in his mind. Tessa had said her birthday was in January. If she was 5 now, Warren felt the blood run cold in his veins. If Tessa was born in January, that meant she was conceived around April, exactly at the time of that photograph, exactly when he and Celine were still together. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Could Celine have discovered the pregnancy after she left him? Could she have decided to raise her daughter alone, never telling the father? Could Tessa be his daughter? Warren sat on the couch, the photograph still in his hands, his heart pounding in his chest. The small coincidences he had noticed now took on a new meaning. They weren't just casual similarities or imitated behaviors. They were inherited traits. It was his blood running through that little girl's veins. 1,000 questions flooded his mind. Why did Celine never tell him? Why did she choose to raise her daughter alone, facing all the hardships, all the struggles? Was his mistake so unforgivable that she would rather hide the existence of a child? And then, the most painful question, how much time had he lost? 5 years. 5 years of first steps, first words, first smiles. 5 years that would never come back. Warren felt hot tears stream down his face. He hadn't cried like this since Celine had left. Now the pain was different, not just for what he had lost, but for what he never got to know. He remembered every moment with Tessa over the past few weeks, how his heart swelled when she smiled, how he worried about every detail of her well-being, how he felt an inexplicable pride seeing her learn something new. Were these paternal feelings? Had his heart recognized what his mind did not yet know? Warren wiped the tears with the back of his hand. He needed to know the truth. He needed to ask Celine directly. But how? How to broach such a delicate, potentially explosive subject? If he was wrong, he could destroy the fragile trust they were rebuilding. And if he was right, what would that mean for all of them? He looked again at the photograph in his hands. Celine, possibly pregnant, not yet knowing the storms that were to come. What different choices would he have made if he had known? Would he have been a better man, a better partner, if he had known there was a child on the way? Regret consumed him, not just for the mistake he made years ago, but for all the lost moments, all the opportunities to be a part of his daughter's life. If Tessa was indeed his daughter. Warren spent the night revisiting every recent memory with Tessa. The way she tilted her head when she was curious about something, the way she moved her tongue to the corner of her mouth when concentrating, the methodical way she organized food on her plate. He remembered the joy in her eyes when she managed to make a simple omelette by herself under his supervision, the pride in her voice when she showed off a well-done drawing, the trust with which she held his hand when crossing the street, and with each memory, the conviction grew. It wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't just his imagination looking for connections where there were none. It was real. Tessa was his daughter. The question now was, what to do with this information? Warren stood up and walked to the window, watching the sky begin to lighten. He had made a decision. He would go to Celine's house that very day. He would face the past head-on. He would ask her directly, looking her in the eyes. Is Tessa my daughter? A simple question, but one that could change everything. If the answer was yes, he would need to find a way to be part of Tessa's life without causing Celine more pain. He would need to prove that he had changed, that he could be the father Tessa deserved, the man Celine once believed he was. If the answer was no, well, he would have to deal with that possibility too. He would have to accept that the similarities were just coincidences, that the bond he felt with Tessa was just affection for a lovely child, but something inside him, a deep and inexplicable certainty, told him he was on the right path. Tessa was a part of him, and after 5 lost years he wouldn't lose another day. With the first light of morning, Warren closed the box of memories, but left the photograph of Celine on the table. That image now represented not just the past, but a possible future. A future where maybe, just maybe, he could find the redemption he so desperately sought. The morning was bright and crisp when Warren parked in front of Celine's building. He had spent a sleepless night, tossing and turning, mentally rehearsing what he would say. How do you ask a woman if she hid your child from you for 5 years? How do you face a truth that could change everything? He took several deep breaths before getting out of the car. In his hands, he carried only a small bag of fresh croissants, a pretext for the visit, though he knew Selene wouldn't be fooled. She always had a gift for reading his intentions, even when he tried to hide them. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling higher than the last. On the 3rd floor, he stopped in front of door 302 and hesitated. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he was about to destroy the fragile relationship they had rebuilt. Maybe it was better to let the past stay buried. But then he remembered Tessa, her smile, her curious eyes, the way her tongue nervously moved to the corner of her mouth when she concentrated, just like he did. If there was the slightest possibility she was his daughter, he needed to know. He owed it to her. He owed it to himself. He rang the doorbell. A few moments later, the door opened to reveal Selene. She looked significantly better than the last time he'd seen her. The color had returned to her cheeks, and her hair was tied back in a simple bun. She wore jeans and a light blue t-shirt, casual but elegant in her simple way. "Warren Jiku," she said, surprised. "I wasn't expecting you today." "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," he replied, holding out the bag. "I brought breakfast." Selene looked from the bag to his face, and Warren knew immediately she sensed there was more to this visit. "Tessa's at school," she informed him, taking the bag. "Fears she won't be back until afternoon." "Actually," Warren began, gathering his courage, "I came to talk to you." Selene stared at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was brighter than usual, with the curtains open, letting the morning sun stream in freely. There were clear signs of Selene's recovery. The living room table was covered with fabrics and sketches, indicating she had resumed her work as a freelance designer. "I'm feeling much better," she commented, noticing his glance. "The doctor said I can go back to work as long as I don't overdo it." "I'm glad to hear that," Warren replied sincerely. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Selene gestured towards the balcony. "Let's sit outside. It's a nice day." Warren nodded, following her to the small balcony. There were just 2 simple chairs and a small table, on which Selene placed the bag of croissants. The view was nothing exceptional, just the neighboring building and a patch of sky, but the fresh air made the space feel welcoming. They sat, and for a moment, neither spoke. Below, on the street, life went on. People rushing to work, children heading to school, a man walking his dog. A normal world, oblivious to the crucial moment unfolding on that small balcony. "You didn't come all this way to bring croissants," Selene said finally, breaking the silence. It wasn't a question. Warren looked down at his hands, then raised his eyes to meet hers. "No." Another silence. Warren could hear his own heart beating. He had imagined this moment countless times during the night, but now, face to face with Selene, all the carefully rehearsed words seemed inadequate. "I found a box yesterday," he began, his voice hoarser than he intended. "A box with our memories. Photos, letters I never sent, little things I kept." Selene remained still, her face a mask of calm, but her eyes revealed an inner storm. "There was a photo of you," Warren continued, "from April, just before everything happened. And I started thinking, doing the math." He saw Selene stiffen almost imperceptibly, her hands resting on the table, clenched slightly. "I know I was wrong in the past," he said, his voice strained, fighting to maintain composure. "I know my help doesn't fix what I did, but I need to know one thing." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Is Tessa my daughter?" The words hung in the air, heavy, definitive. There was no going back after them. Selene looked away, her gaze fixed on a distant point. Her fingers drummed lightly on the table, an old habit when she was nervous. For a long moment, she said nothing, and Warren feared she would simply get up and go inside, leaving him without an answer. Finally, she looked at the floor and took a deep breath. "I thought I'd never have this conversation with you," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I thought our paths would never cross again." She paused, still not looking at him. "You hurt me so much. Do you know what it's like to love and be betrayed?" Her voice trembled slightly. "You don't forget that I loved you, Warren. And you threw it all away." She finally raised her eyes, meeting his. There was pain there, but also strength. "Then I found out I was pregnant, and I thought you didn't deserve to know." The confirmation hit Warren like a wave. Even though he had suspected, even though he had connected the dots, hearing the truth from Celine's lips was different. It was real. It was irrevocable. Tessa was his daughter. Warren felt something break inside him, a dam of emotions held back for years, maybe decades. Tears began to stream down his face, silent at first, then accompanied by sobs he couldn't control. For the first time since he was a boy, Warren Maddox cried openly, without trying to hide it, without trying to contain it. All the defenses, all the masks he had built over the years crumbled, leaving only the raw, vulnerable man, faced with a truth that changed everything. I have a daughter," he murmured through his tears, more to himself than to Celine. "All these years, I never even knew." Celine watched, her own face a mix of conflicting emotions. There was anger there, resentment for the years of solitary struggle. But there was also something else, perhaps understanding, perhaps even a hint of regret for her own decision. "You weren't ready to be a father," she said finally, "or a husband for that matter. You chose your career above all else. Above me." Warren wiped his tears with the back of his hand, trying to regain some control. "You're right," he admitted, his voice still choked. "I was selfish, arrogant. I thought I could have everything without commitment. When you found out about the other woman, I could have begged for your forgiveness, tried to fix things. Instead, I blamed you for stifling my creativity, for not understanding the pressure I was under." He laughed bitterly. "What a pathetic excuse. The truth is, I was scared of commitment, of the idea of building a life together, so I sabotaged everything." A silence settled between them. It was no longer an uncomfortable silence, but one that was full of memories, of pain, of long unspoken truths. "If I had known about Tessa," Warren began. "Don't say that," Celine interrupted, shaking her head. "We can't rewrite the past with what-ifs. You were who you were, I am who I am. We made our choices." "But I've changed, Selina," Warren said, leaning forward. "I'm not saying I deserve your forgiveness, or that we can go back to what we were. I'm just saying I'm not that man anymore." Selina studied him, as if trying to see beyond the surface, searching for the truth in his words. "Maybe," she conceded finally. "You have been different. The way you took care of Tessa when I was sick, how you've helped without asking for recognition." She paused, considering her next words. "I think Tessa deserves to know the truth." Warren felt a tightness in his chest, a mix of fear and hope. "You'd tell her?" he asked, almost in disbelief. Selene nodded slowly. "She already likes you. And she's been asking questions about her father. Questions I've answered vaguely until now." "What did you tell her?" "That her father lived far away. That sometimes people who love each other have to go their separate ways." She shrugged. Half-truths a child could understand. Warren absorbed that, imagining how Tessa must have felt all these years, growing up without a father, picturing him as a distant, almost mythical figure. "How will we tell her?" he asked. "I will tell her," Celine corrected. "Alone first. Then, if she wants to, you two can talk." Warren nodded, respecting her decision. "Thank you," he said simply. "I know you didn't have to do this." "I'm not doing it for you," Selena replied, her tone firm but not hostile. "I'm doing it for Tessa." That afternoon, when Tessa came home from school, Selene took her into her room and closed the door. Warren waited in the living room, his heart beating so loudly he was sure it could be heard from across the apartment. Minutes passed, feeling like an eternity. He paced back and forth, trying to imagine the conversation happening in the other room. How would Tessa react? Would she be happy, confused, hurt for being kept in the dark for so long? Finally, the door opened. Tessa came out first, her big eyes fixed on Warren. watching him as if seeing him for the first time. Celine followed, a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Warren stood motionless, unsure what to do or say. The moment felt too fragile for words. It was Tessa who broke the silence. "Mommy said you're my daddy," she said, her voice small but clear. Warren swallowed hard, kneeling to get on her level. "Yes," he replied, his voice trembling. "I am." Tessa tilted her head, studying him with a surprising intensity for such a small child. "Why didn't you ever come to see me before?" The question hit him like a punch, so simple, so direct, and so impossible to answer adequately. "Because," he began, searching for the right words, "I didn't know you existed. If I had known, I would have come. I would have been here from the very first day." Tessa considered the answer, processing it in her own way. "You know now," she said finally. "Now I know," Warren agreed, a lump in his throat. "Are you going to stay?" she asked, with the brutal simplicity of childhood. Warren looked at Celine, seeking guidance, but her face was unreadable. "I will stay in your life, yes," he promised, turning back to Tessa. "If you want me to. I don't know exactly how it will work, but I want to be your dad. I want to get to know you. I want you to get to know me." Tessa studied him for another moment, then, to Warren's surprise, gave a small smile. "Okay," she said, as if she had reached a decision after great deliberation. "You already know how to make mac and cheese. That's good for a dad." Warren couldn't help the laugh that escaped, mixed with the tears that were returning to his eyes. The simplicity of a child's acceptance was overwhelming. Can I give you a hug?" he asked hesitantly. Tessa looked at Celine, who gave a slight nod. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her thin arms around Warren's neck. The contact was electric, transcendent. Hugging his daughter for the first time, knowing who she truly was an experience Warren knew he would carry forever. He closed his eyes, feeling Tessa's small heart beating against his chest, her childlike scent, the gentle weight of her trusting body. When he opened his eyes, he saw Celine watching them. Silent tears were streaming down her face, and for the first time since they had reunited, her gaze held no hostility. There was pain, yes, and maybe a shadow of regret, but there was also something like peace, as if a long, difficult chapter was finally coming to a close. In the days that followed, a new routine began to form. Warren came to visit Tessa almost daily. They cooked together, simple father-daughter recipes, like elaborate sandwiches and chocolate chip cookies. They read stories, him introducing her to the world of books he had loved as a child. At home, they tested these first interactions, still shy, still in a process of discovery. Warren taught Tessa how to make simple pasta, patiently explaining each step. She absorbed everything with watchful eyes, her tongue moving in the corner of her mouth in concentration, that all-too-familiar gesture that now had a completely new meaning. Celine observed this new relationship with complex feelings. There were moments of sadness for the lost years, moments of doubt about her decision to have kept Warren away for so long. But mostly, there was a growing acceptance that, despite everything, perhaps things were finally falling into place as they should. One evening, while Tessa was sleeping, Warren approached Celine in the kitchen. "I was thinking of taking Tessa to the park tomorrow," he said hesitantly. "If you'll allow it." Celine considered for a moment, then nodded. She would like that. The joy on Warren's face was almost palpable. The idea of his first outing alone with his daughter, a simple moment that was commonplace for so many fathers, but meant the world to him. When he said goodbye that night, Celine watched from the window as he walked to his car. There was a lightness in his step that wasn't there before. The truth had changed all of them. Silent tears streamed down Celine's face as she watched. They weren't just tears of pain for the past, but also of relief. The weight of a secret kept for so long had finally been lifted. There was pain there, yes. Pain for the past, for the betrayals, for the years of solitary struggle. But there was also something new growing. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of an understanding, of an acceptance that sometimes people really do change. That sometimes a second chance is not only possible, but necessary. For Tessa, for all of them. Saturday morning dawned perfect, as if the sky itself was conspiring to make the day special. Warren woke up before his alarm, a mix of anxiety and excitement bubbling in his chest. Today would be his first full day with Tessa, just the two of them. A father-daughter day. He had meticulously planned every detail. A cooler bag with water and juice, sunscreen, a small first aid kit, in case Tessa got hurt while playing, even an extra set of clothes, in case she got wet in the park fountain. He wanted to be prepared for any eventuality, like a responsible father. At 9 o'clock sharp, he parked in front of Celine's building. Tessa was already waiting for him at the entrance, bouncing from one foot to the other, while Celine stood watching beside her. The girl wore a simple yellow dress and white sneakers, her hair in 2 pigtails. She looked even more like Celine this way, but Warren noticed, not without a pang of pride, that her smile revealed the same dimple he had on the left side of his face. "Daddy!" Tessa exclaimed, running towards him as soon as she saw him. The word still caught him off guard. Daddy. So simple, so fundamental, and yet so new to him. Every time Tessa called him that, he felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Good morning, Princess," he replied, bending down to hug her. "Ready for our big day?" Tessa nodded vigorously. "I've been ready for hours. Mommy said we had to wait because you might still be sleeping." Warren smiled at Celine over his daughter's head. "Thank you for letting her come," Celine shrugged, but there was a faint smile on her lips. "Have fun. And remember, no sweets before lunch, sunscreen every 2 hours, and she needs to be home by 6 for her bath." "Yes, Ma'am," Warren replied, giving a little salute that drew a giggle from Tessa. Celine bent down to give her daughter one last hug. "Behave, you hear, and listen to—" Why, she hesitated for a moment. "To your father?" Tessa nodded solemnly, then took Warren's hand and pulled him toward the car. "Let's go, Daddy. You said you had a surprise." The day began at the city's Central Park, a vast green space with a lake, playgrounds, and wooded trails. Tessa ran ahead, pointing out every wonder she found. A squirrel leaping between branches, a pair of ducks swimming in the lake, a blue-winged butterfly resting on a flower. "Look at that one," she exclaimed, pointing to a particularly large tree. "Can we climb it?" Warren looked at the tree, considering. It didn't look dangerous, with low, strong branches. "Let's try," he answered, lifting her to reach the first branch. Tessa climbed with surprising agility, Warren right behind her, ready to catch her if needed. But the girl proved to be confident and sure-footed, carefully choosing where to step. "Mommy never lets me climb trees," she confided, once they were comfortably seated on a wide branch, looking down at the park. "So she says it's dangerous." "Well, your mum is right to be worried," Warren replied, careful not to undermine Celine's authority. "But sometimes, with care and with someone helping you, it's worth taking small risks to see the world from a different perspective." Tessa considered the answer, then smiled. "I like seeing things from up here. Had feels like I'm a giant." Warren took his phone out of his pocket and snapped a picture of the two of them, Tessa with a wide grin, him with his arm around her shoulders, the green canopy as a backdrop. The first of many photos that would mark that day. After the tree, they visited the playground. Tessa proved skillful on the slide, the swings, and especially the jungle gym. Warren watched her with a mixture of pride and that instinctive fear all parents feel seeing their children take risks. "Higher, Daddy!" she shouted from the swing as he pushed her. "I want to touch the sky," Warren obliged, but always with care, measuring the exact force to make her happy without putting her in danger. This balance, he realized, was perhaps the essence of fatherhood, giving enough freedom to grow, enough protection to feel safe. At noon, they found a small restaurant by the lake. Tessa ordered spaghetti and meatballs, just like in the movie with the doggy, she explained, and Warren opted for the same, happy to share this small moment. They talked about her school, her friends, her dreams for the future. "I want to be a chef like you," she declared, with tomato sauce on her chin, "but I also want to be an astronaut, and a vet, and a ballerina." Warren smiled, wiping her chin with a napkin. "You can be anything you want, you know, and you can change your mind as many times as you need to." After lunch, they went to an ice cream parlor. Tessa chose strawberry ice cream with chocolate topping, while Warren opted for pistachio, a flavor she tried and declared weird, but not bad. "When I was little like you," Warren said, as they walked with their ice creams, "my dad used to take me for ice cream every Sunday, no matter the weather." "Even if it was raining?" Tessa asked, impressed. "Even in the snow," he confirmed, remembering the harsh winters of his childhood. He used to say that special days shouldn't be cancelled because of the weather. "Does your dad still get ice cream with you?" The innocent question caught him off guard. It had been years since he'd thought about his own father, who had passed away when he was in college. "No," he answered softly. "He went to heaven a long time ago, but I remember all of our ice cream days." Tessa considered this for a moment, then held his free hand more tightly. "Can we have ice cream every Sunday too? That way you'll remember him. And one day when I'm big, I'll remember you." Warren felt a lump in his throat. How could this little 5-year-old person be so profound? "That's a great idea," he managed to say. "Let's do that." The last stop of the day was a bookstore. Tessa's eyes widened at the sight of shelves full of children's books. Warren told her she could pick 3 dies, but they ended up leaving with 5. It was impossible to say no when she held each book as if it were a precious treasure, explaining exactly why she needed it. "This one has a dragon who can't fly, but he learns," she explained about one. "And this one teaches about the stars. And this one has recipes for kids." They left the bookstore with a full bag and lighter hearts. On the way back to the car, Tessa held his hand with a confidence that wasn't there at the start of the day. It was no longer the hand of a near stranger she was holding, but her father's. "This was the best day of my life," she declared, once they were in the car. "Mine too," Warren replied, and realized it was true. They took one last selfie together in the car, with Tessa making a funny face that made him laugh so hard the picture came out blurry. When they arrived at Celine's apartment, Tessa ran ahead to recount all the day's adventures. Warren followed more slowly, carrying the bag of books, his heart overflowing with an emotion he had never felt before. Celine was waiting for them, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. "Looks like you two had fun," she commented. "It was amazing, Mommy. We climbed trees and we had ice cream and we bought books and we saw ducks and—" "Breathe, sweetie," Selina laughed. "You can tell me all about it during your bath." While Celine took Tessa to get washed up, Warren arranged the new books on the small shelf in the girls' room. Each title carefully selected, each story they could now share. He also found a space on the wall to put one of the photos they had taken in the park, which he had quickly printed at a shop on the way back. When Celine returned to the living room, she found Warren looking thoughtfully out the window. "She adores you," she said simply. Warren turned, emotion clear on his face. "And I adore her. I had no idea." His voice broke. "I had no idea it was possible to love someone like this, so completely, so instantly." Celine nodded, understanding. "That's how it is. From the very first moment." A comfortable silence settled between them. It wasn't the tense silence from before, laden with unspoken resentments. It was something new, like a truce. "Celine," Warren began, his voice serious. "I will do everything for her. I'll put her in the best schools, make sure she has everything she needs. If you want, I'll even buy a house for you to live in, somewhere better. You'll never want for anything again." Celine studied him for a long moment. "I'm not asking for that. I know, but I want to do it. Not to buy your forgiveness or a place in her life, but because it's the least I can do after missing 5 years. Celine considered his words, then nodded slightly. "We can talk about it, but Warren—" She paused. "She doesn't need expensive things or elite schools. She needs you, your presence, your time, your love. She'll have all of it," he promised. "Every minute I can give." Tessa returned to the living room, already in her pajamas, her hair damp from the bath. "Daddy, are you going to have dinner with us?" she asked hopefully. Warren looked at Celine, who nodded with a small smile. "Since you two had such a busy day, I was thinking of ordering pizza," she suggested. "What do you think?" "Pizza," Tessa celebrated. While they waited for the delivery, Tessa insisted that Warren read one of the new books. The 3 of them sat on the couch, Tessa in the middle, as he read the story of the dragon who couldn't fly but discovered other special skills. When the pizza arrived, they settled at the table. An unlikely family, brought together by extraordinary circumstances. Warren watched Tessa excitedly explain how they had seen a squirrel steal someone's snack in the park. Her enthusiasm, her expressiveness, traits of his own that he had never noticed until he saw them reflected in her. Celine watched too, her eyes alternating between her daughter and the man who, against all odds, had returned to their lives. The hurts of the past were still there, scars that would probably never fully fade. But there was something new as well. An acceptance, maybe even the beginning of forgiveness. During the meal, there was a moment when Tessa spilled her juice cup. Before Celine could react, Warren was already cleaning up the spill, reassuring Tessa that accidents happen, making her laugh by telling her about the time he spilled sauce on an important customer. Celine observed the interaction, something softening in her gaze. When Tessa finally went to bed, exhausted after her day of adventures, Celine and Warren were left alone in the kitchen, clearing the last traces of dinner. "Thank you for today," Celine said, breaking the silence. "I haven't seen her this happy in a long time." Warren stopped what he was doing, turning to face her. "I'm the one who should be thanking you for letting me be a part of her life, after everything." Celine studied him for a moment. Then, in a gesture of sincerity that caught him off guard, she said, "You're a good father, Warren." 6 simple words, but they meant everything. A recognition, a beginning, a possibility for the future. Warren felt tears in his eyes, but this time he didn't try to hide them. "I'm trying to be," he answered honestly, "and I'll keep trying every day." That night, driving back home, Warren felt different, as if something fundamental had shifted inside him. He was no longer just the star chef, the successful businessman. He was Tessa's father. And somehow, this new role, the most important he had ever had, made all the others seem insignificant in comparison. The city lights glittered around him, but all he could see were the smiles from that day, stored forever in his memory and his heart. A day to remember, the first of many to come. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.